Hello everyone, what's happening? My name is George and today I'm gonna just do my review, chaos review on Bioshock Infinite. Alright, it's the game I've played, I dissected, I had time to grab footage and just rewatch the tapes, and it's kinda like I'm gonna explain kinda like what I got from it, the story, as well as the gameplay, and I'll give my sense or two about it. So this might be a long one, so just get a snack, come back, and sit tight if you want to listen to this. Alright, let's get started. Alright, so I guess we can start, I'm gonna talk about the whole story. So we're gonna talk about start from the beginning, right? You start like on this draft. Later on know that your character's name is DeWitt, Booker DeWitt. Um, so you're on like this raft, I guess, and these two people are somewhat guiding you. They're giving you a trip on the boat to where you're gonna head next, which is like a lighthouse. But you see, Bioshock in general is very deceptive, right? I mean, they're like in the 1920s, but they got technology that's like, from an alternate timeline, you could say. They got cities underground, and this next city you're gonna be visiting is up in the clouds, right? And how it's in the clouds. I mean, in the game they explain it as quantum physics, which I have no idea what that means, but it's just something that in this alternate timeline they discovered, and they can mess around with, right? And as the game progresses, you see how in the beginning of those two draft, when you're on the draft, those two individuals that are just taking it, kind of just making small talk, but they come into play later on during the game. So you kind of like you have like this dream as the character Booker do it. These two characters are they're brother and sister, and they got like a kind of like a little scheme going on. So you make it to this town in Colombia, and you have this mark on your arm, AD. Which I'll get to it what happens later on, but essentially whoever walks around with that mark in their arm is kind of like the false shepherd, as they would call it. He's so the discovery of the false shepherd, and now the whole town is against you, right? First you're just walking normally as a free man, because no one really cares. But then once they discover that brand on your arm, now everyone's like hostile towards you. Everyone's trying to kill you now. And it's up to you. Your mission to get to this town was to find the girl named Elizabeth. Now Elizabeth's she has like these powers that she can conjure up, opening like gates to different, I want to say like different, I don't want to say, I guess you could say a different dimension, like like an alternate timeline. Like she could be in one place, but she can get there on another based on these like holes where if another action were to take place, they'll create like a separate timeline, and she can walk in between these. She can open these rifts between these dimensions, and that's kind of like her power, I guess. She's got it within her. So you rescue her, and now she's with you. She's got this guardian, this bird guardian that hates water. It cannot stand the water. It'll drown in water because it's so heavy. So he kind of gets you off her, and as you're trying to escape, but then he leaves, and now you find, you're with Elizabeth, and you're just sort of guiding her, and you guys both have a goal, which is she wants to escape Colombia. She wants to go see like Paris and like, the world, and you have the mission to take her back to, you know, the whoever hired you to get her from the Colombia to them, so that you can pay off this debt, right? And she isn't used to violence, so at first she's kind of like mad because you're going on this way to kill innocent people, but she's got no choice, right? I mean, she's now a fugitive with you, so she's kind of like playing along. In the beginning, she's just kind of flowing with you. So I mean, it makes in other Bioshock games, the fact that you have powers, what you would call them, the these things you drink from the jars, that Big Daddy used to have, they're back, and you essentially need to find one that has the electricity one, because the electricity one will grant access to an elevator. This elevator is the elevator that will take you to this Zeppelin, and from the Zeppelin, now you guys have an aircraft that can take you guys anywhere, right? And main course, and the course up next is getting out of Colombia and going back to out of the colony. Now, as you're trying to do that, Elizabeth figures out that, wait, those aren't the coordinates for Paris, which you promised, and she becomes upset because now Dewey has to come to terms telling her the truth, in which he was hired to come find her in order to take her to some people to which he owed money to. Now she's upset and knocks Dewey out, and in that course, she escapes. She drops out of the aircraft, lands somewhere, and now you have to help some people that take over your Zeppelin. But first of all, you gotta find, and these people want help from a gunsmith that will help him turn the tides on, like, I guess, a revolution, a rebellion. So now you're on your own again. You find Elizabeth. She somehow forgives you, and she says that, well, you sort of Dewey explains that, well, the way to get out is we gotta find this blacksmith to help these people to get the Zeppelin back, and then we can get out. So as the next thing you go on, you find this lady who is the blacksmith's wife. I'm not sure who the name of the blacksmith is, but you're trying to find her. You trying to find him, but you only find the wife, and the wife says that, well, they took him away. They took him away for auction. So now it's up to Elizabeth and DeWitt to go to this auction place where they take slaves, and they try to sell them to the highest bidder. Because slavery in this colony is apparently okay. Oh, they're okay with that. So you go to like this place where they auction people, and it seems nice and all, but on the back it's kind of like a jail cell. And you finally find the blacksmith, right, which is like this but unfortunately he's been tortured to death. There's no way around it. They find him, but he's just not conscious anymore. He's done. He's completely beat up. He's changed. And then finally you come across the siblings that at this point in time you kind of like discover, like, whoa, these guys aren't natural. They manifest literally through thin air, and that's because they're kind of like these masters of quantum physics, which, again, I got I'm about to take like a second guess on that because I just don't know how exactly it comes into play. But that's the gimmick, right? They say that quantum physics, and apparently it's, they Houdini their way in and out of any situation. And they say that, well, with kind of like they give like this thing where every reaction has another reaction, or you know, there's two sides to a coin, I guess, meaning there's two alternate timelines. So Elizabeth sees this rift in time where the blacksmith isn't dead. He's doing some. He's alive. So both of you decide to enter this, this kind of like pocket dimension where he's still alive, and that changes. It changes like everything you've been through. That small change where you guys go just to make him come back to life. It apparently it's got like massive effects, right? It's kind of like that butterfly effect. Massive course of history. So now you find the blacksmith, but the blacksmith doesn't have his what his machinery. He can't create weapons because they took away his machines now. So now you go find his machines, and you open this rift in time once again to bring all of his machines back to him. And doing so, once that happens, through the course of you doing these things, it turns out that you change time so many times, off and on again, that what you were once looked at as the false shepherd, they now like idolize you. Like now in this timeline, you're the leader of a rebellion, and so you got like a faction, the faction that is trying to rebel is helping you now. But and also in this timeline, DeWitt is apparently dead. He's no longer alive. So a lot of things change, and the girl initially that sent you out to help you, initially sent you to find the blacksmith, is now at arms with you because you're not the same DeWitt from my timeline that used to fight for something. You're someone else. The Booker DeWitt I knew was different, but you've been through all these pocket dimensions that you don't even know what exactly happened in the courses that you have changed. So anyway, you finally get Elizabeth, takes her down in the back. She finally has her first kill confirmed, and she kind of changes her outfit. She kind of goes through like a change. But you finally get back on your Zeppelin, right? You get your Zeppelin back, and the bird comes back and destroys everything. Destroys the Zeppelin down, so no one's leaving Colombia in one piece as long as Elizabeth is still around, right? Because he's apparently like Elizabeth's guardian. So now you kind of wake up from the wreckage, and you find the two the siblings again, and they kind of give you this thing where it's kind of like a blueprint of what controls the beast, and it's a mechanism, right? It's like a flute, like it'll listen to music. Music controls the animal. So now you go through this phase where by this point Elizabeth and DeWitt realize that, okay, well, these two, Elizabeth finds out that the lady is kind of like the lead founder of what quantum physics are, and she's kind of apparently read about this in her tower. In her tower, she's got like all these books, and she had nothing else to do but to read all these books. So she knows about them, and you can see like right now in this this little slide, how these two are just uh, coming into reality from they show up into reality from like from nowhere. They must be opening like portals. They don't know how they're doing it. You know, they can't really explain it, but they do it. You know, it's it's kind of like magic, but they use the word quantum physics. Uh, so finally, to get this flute, they have to travel back and see about Elizabeth's past. So you find Elizabeth's mother's burial, and so now you get to fight the mother's ghost apparently, because it's kind of like a trap where her mom's ghost is kind of like set up to her corpse was somehow stopped in time, and now you get to fight her ghost. So after defeating the ghost, kind of like the mother's spirit can talk to Elizabeth, and they kind of like come into sort of you know, they reconcile their differences. They kind of like forgive each other, because the ghost was, you know, the spirit of the mom had like resentments towards Elizabeth in a way, because she thought she was the reason that, you know, Elizabeth's father kind of like resented them in a way. So they get to talking and they kind of get that out the way. Now you after the fight, you guys do it, and Elizabeth take a kind of like a trail. I wouldn't say a trail, kind of like a platform. That'll take him to the next destination to find Comstock, which is presumed to be Elizabeth's father. And as soon as that happens, the bird comes back, right? The bird comes back and snatches Elizabeth out. It's a big creature, so there's nothing it could do. So he has to let her go and find an alternative to getting her back. Now, upon trying to get her back, the bird takes Elizabeth to a research station, to where they want her powers. They want to study her powers. This Columbia institution wants to study her powers, which is why they had her in the cage. But it's up to you to go out and save her. So now you're like in this purgatory like timeline where, as you're moving towards her to save her, they're already trying to do experiments on her, right? And so once you reach a certain point where you find her, it would have turned out that as you're making your way through like this purgatory, you know, stage or whatnot, you find these note logs, you know, that Elizabeth's been like recording, and it'll be saying stuff like, you know, as the days go by, you know, to Booker it's only been, you know, an hour or two, but as you come to find out, you realize that it's been, you know, years for Elizabeth to finally, when you finally confront Elizabeth, she's, you know, she's like in her 50s or 60s. You know, a lot of time has passed, and she's overseeing like this attack on New York City from Colombia that is right from the beginning. You know, it's something that that Booker was seeing in his dreams. You know, he was seeing Colombia being attacked by New York, Colombia attacking New York. We didn't know exactly when or why or how, and it turned out it was the future. And Elizabeth was kind of like, in this timeline, she was kind of like, you know, used and controlled by Comstock, which is, you know, her father, or what they uh, presume to show in a way. So as Booker DeWitt is talking to Elizabeth, um, she kind of had like this final stored power from when she finally got a chance to see, Booker like one last time, so she can kind of prevent all this from happening, right? This whole timeline from happening. So she kind of writes down a note from herself to her in the past, and uses her remaining time, I guess her time pocket, to send you back to where you could actually save her. And now, and now, and now you was Booker has the note to give to Elizabeth from the past to prevent all this from happening, and so it goes from there. And now the next objective is to finally reach Comstock and kind of like put an end to it. Try to change the whole attack on New York from happening. So finally you kind of get to like the last stretch of the game, which is you making your way up to Comstock through his Zeppelin. Once you finally confront Comstock, he he'll kind of say some things about how it's all it's kind of like all Elizabeth's fault for kind of like defying what he was trying to defend her from. And Booker kind of like just doesn't doesn't agree. And Booker proceeds to bashing his head on the fountain, and then drowning him, killing him ultimately. And so from him you finally obtain the excuse me from him you finally obtain the flute, the instrument that would control the beast, the big bird, Big Daddy. So now you kind of like have him on your side. Now he becomes like your assistant on some like kind of like the final escape. As you're trying to escape, he kind of like destroys the Zeppelins for you as you take down the foot soldiers. And he finally destroys the tower that once Elizabeth resided on for like her entire life. And finally she opens like a final rift to one of her pocket dimensions. And it's quite it's astonishing, because she sends everything back to like this underwater facility, which is from Bioshock 1 or 2. I think presumably 2, because you get a glimpse of a Big Daddy and a little sister across the window, and you see them, and you realize that this was just this is one of the alternate timelines. This is one of the dimensions that occur because of Elizabeth's power. And there was one where they're in the city, there's one when they're underwater, and they're everything in between, right? As you go and find out that once you escape this underwater facility, you see that it becomes I guess you could say a loop of insanity. And that's when, I wouldn't say insanity, but that's kind of like where the game comes to a conclusion, or it comes to an end. There's not really a stop to infinity, but to just not let it all happen. And you kind of see the story of what undergoes in the past, and how it even all got started right before the game even begins. you know, right? You kind of like go back to the draft you were with those two people, and as it turns out, well, uh, you know, so you return back to Elizabeth to the lighthouse and whatnot, and you guys traverse the door, and Elizabeth, she can see almost all realities, right? She's got a bigger glimpse than Booker, and through one of these, he you guys go to like a kind of like a ceremony thing where he gives out his life in order to become reborn again, but he refuses, at least in this timeline, but in the original timeline, he had accepted it, therefore just causing like a you know, this infinite possibilities where so finally he traverses to the final door, and it leads you back to kind of Booker's office, right? His kind of like where he kind of like seems to flash back often, and he's, you know, you get at Booker gets asked the same question, right? Kind of like, the gave us the girl and the debt is paid off, and at first, um, Booker doesn't know what to make of that, and then he kind of like goes inside this room and he sees the girl, and he has no other choice but to give her away, and his debt is paid off, and you kind of like go back to this, uh, to this loop, like uh, like you can't really escape the loop unless he kind of like figures it out on his own, you know, how to end it all. But you do get to see what happens in, you know, what is happening uh behind the scenes, right? And you get this like final scene of the girl that you're giving away as your daughter, or Booker's daughter, I should say, and you know, you give it a Comstock and the brothers, and they're using their quantum physics to escape, but she leaves off a your daughter, Booker's daughter leaves off a pinky as the portal is closing, and he brands himself AD for Anna DeWitt, which is Elizabeth's true mother, and meaning Elizabeth was DeWitt's daughter, and it's a whole mess. And he's kind of like living this reality infinite times, and the only way to stop it was to kind of end himself in a way. So you finally get to see like this last panel. I mean, the ending itself was just good enough to see on its own, but it's just too much to explain, I feel. um and so the game just kind of like, well, if you wanted it all to end, it was kind of like DeWitt's only way to end was just end himself, because if there is no DeWitt, there is no Elizabeth. So kind of like, it's the name of the game, Bioshock Infinite. It's just all these infinite possibilities. So Columbia wouldn't have happened, the cities on the ground wouldn't have happened if it just weren't for DeWitt. So that's kind of like the last scene you get to witness, as if there was no DeWitt, there is no Elizabeth, and there are no changes in, you know, and whatnot. So that's the story aspect. Now just quickly I'll get into like the gameplay. The last, you know, wherever. Okay, so finally I guess I'll just talk about the gameplay aspects of it, and You know, it's in terms of combat, it's a lot smoother. It's more fluid to the gameplay compared to Bioshock 1 and 2. I'm kind of glad they made melee a button now instead of a weapon you have to equip. But it does take away some damage. You know, you're not doing as much damage as you were from your drill in Bioshock 2. You do a certain fixed damage, and you could get it higher through the use of perks. Unlike Bioshock 2, where you could have a plethora of perks. You can only pick up to 4 in this game. You know, the passive abilities, and they come in the form of like equipment. But you can only have up to 4. The gunplay is it's nice. It's kind of fluid. It's got, you know, a handful of weapons you can use. You can aim down sight. You can just shoot from the hip. And in terms of powers, well, they added a good amount of powers too. You got the classics, thunder, fire, I think ice, and they added like water. You can like grab enemies, toss them out, or just use a ram ability that will like hit physical damage, and a lot more. Like there's one that was just like send everything flying, like keep it on like a stasis sort of float. It'll give them extra damage if you hit them while they're floating, and it kind of like moves them, so you could potentially like hit someone with it and bring them out in a way, which is something you could do now because it's kind of like an open space most of the time when you in combat. Unlike Bioshock 2, where it felt really like claustrophobic, because you're always in like these tight environments. You know, there's like walls everywhere in Bioshock 2, you know, because you're like under water, which is already paranoid enough, and you got like all these like tunnels, not tunnels but corridors, I guess. And Bioshock Infinite is just like an open area, so it's kind of glad to see. I did enjoy most of the gameplay. You know, it's kind of like running, gunning with smooth weapons. So the gameplay it's I would say an upgrade from what it once was, or what it was from Bioshock 1 and 2. And my final thoughts, final score. I'll give this game 4 to 5 stars, just because it upgraded on the storytelling from 1 and 2. It had a smoother gameplay. It was overall, I think, just an improvement. I mean, the only negative thing I could say was, I mean, if you like playing as the Big Daddy, I mean, he's no longer around. Kind of back to Bioshock 1, which is like a human. But he does make an appearance, so I think that makes up for it. And the story is nice, the gameplay is okay, and it's an improvement. So yeah, it's a good game. Go check it out, I would say. And that'll be it for this time. Remember to just stay tuned, subscribe, and I'll catch you all next time. Take care.